Thanks for tuning into my new show, Get U.S. Market Ready with Italian Wine People. I'm Steve Raye, author of the book, How to Get U.S. Market Ready. And in my previous podcast, I shared some of the lessons I've learned from 30 years in the wine and spirits business, helping brands enter and grow in the U.S. market. This series will be dedicated to the personalities who have been working in the Italian wine sector in the U.S., their experiences, challenges, and personal stories. I'll uncover the roads that they walked, shedding light on current trends, business strategies, and their unique brands. So, thanks for listening in, and let's get to the interview. Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of Get U.S. Market Ready with Italian Wine People. This is Steve Raye, and I'm really pleased to have as a guest this week, Maddalena Pasqua di Bisceglie. Did I pronounce that right, Maddalena?
Yeah, perfectly. Thank you.
Or close. Okay.
Yeah, that's not easy to pronounce, so congratulations.
No, not at all. I first met Maddalena at Vin Italy several years ago, and I distinctly recall when I had asked her a question, tell me about yourself, and you started the conversation by saying, well, once there was a little girl. And really, that's kind of the intro here. Give us a little background on how your family came to buy the winery, what your role is in it, and what your philosophies were, and what a challenge that might have been to get started that way.
Thank you for the question, Steve. So Mussella is the name of an estate, not the family name, because my father arrived in Mussella almost 30 years ago, having the dream to interpret his own place. So he wanted to have a special project for the local traditional wine, that is Valpolicella, and he wanted to have something very special to represent his own tradition. And so he found this incredible place in the east part of Verona that actually has an estate, is a sort of a national park, is a protected park, where animals, plants, houses are protected, and so he decided to establish there his own winery. He involved myself first, and then my mother, and then all the family, because my cousin is working here too. So it was definitely is a family business, and we try to do our best in keeping this place in good health and keeping this place available to the people in order to understand what is the Valpolicella area and how the traditional viticulture is interpreted here.
Your initial philosophy was biodynamic, which at the time, I don't think I can say that it was revolutionary. It was certainly different and not commonly practiced there. I've met and visited and toured a lot of biodynamic producers, but I'm reminded of one particular image, and I have a photograph of it. We were at your winery and we walked out into the vineyard, and you said something like, Steve, here, I want to show you something. And you stuck your hand into the soil in between the rows, and the hand went all the way up to, almost to your wrist, easily, without, unlike when you would put a shovel in. You made the point that the tilth of the soil, the word in English, is shows you exactly what's going on in the soils and the preservation of the microorganisms and all that kind of stuff. But there's a bigger issue to or philosophy behind biodynamics. Tell me how you first found out about it, why you've embraced it, and how you've implemented that into the wines that you make.
So yes, we didn't start immediately, because here in my place, biodynamic is not that common. People is still pretty strict to the conventional old way to have viticulture. So I needed to work a lot with my family to get them closer to this philosophy. And this is exactly what you say. The most important thing is to think about the soil, the renovation of the soil, the possibility of a regeneration of the soil. That is a sort of compensation of what the agriculture can do. Modern agriculture is stressing the soil, and the stress in the soil, you lose all the bacteria, the microorganism. Everything is able to make the humus, and humus is the fundamental base of everything. Is what is giving the food, the real food to the plant. Is what is giving the autoimmune system to the plant. Is able to make to put the plant in the condition to protect itself, at least for a big part. And once again, what we wanted to do, because my father wanted to interpret this place, was important to me to keep the place in absolutely perfect health. And the biodynamic was one of the fantastic way we had, the fantastic possibility we had at disposition to do it. And so after a bit that I need to convince to let the people go into the experience, we are now all happy to follow this method that is working very well, and it made our soil definitely more soft, rich, as you said, penetrable. And so that means full of air, and air means life, and life means life, good life for everybody else, insect, animals, human beings, plants. So it's a chain.
A chain or circle. Yeah, absolutely. We're not going to go into the details of biodynamics. People can look that up.
It's very long.
One thing that has happened in the U.S. in the last 2 years, and I'm not talking about COVID, is Hollywood celebrity Cameron Diaz came out with a wine, which she termed clean wines. She kind of coined that word. Really what it was is she started off with a cava and a couple of other relatively inexpensive Spanish wines that would maybe have sold for $6 or $9 at retail, but she was selling them at like 24. And she talked about clean wines and promoted clean wines. And I thought the beauty of that was by saying her wine is clean, it means that everybody else is not. And, by definition, biodynamic, I think, fits in the category of natural wines, clean wines, and so forth. So there's this kind of issue in the U.S. about what the definition of terms mean. Organic is something that means something very special in the U.S., and it's regulated by the USDA. Just because you're organic in Europe or the EU doesn't mean that you're organic here. So talk about her thing about clean wines and how it's become very public and people are talking about it, and your view of natural wines produced through the biodynamic process.
Okay, so this is a very long argument and not that very easy. I mean, I try to make it very short because it's a decade listening to the story: organic, biodynamic, and natural. So what does it mean, natural? I don't want to stay here and explaining that no one can be called natural when you have a vineyard, but this is a sort of polemic.
And the reason you say that is because it's a monoculture, right?
Exactly. If I plant 1,000 of plants in 1 hectare with no other plants, that is not natural. A natural wine would be a vine in the forest, and I pick up one after looking for like mushrooms. So apart this, natural wine means normally that they don't add any sulfates into the wine. Biodynamic wine are different because they are more. We are more worried in the soil regeneration than the effect, because when you have a fantastic, a good soil regeneration, you have a lot of substances and natural elements into the wine, starting from the anthocyanids in the skin, that are able to create a process in vinification, making the vinification very, very easy. So we don't need to add a lot of sulfates. So I do, for example, add not sulfates, but sulfur, steam of sulfur, in a very small quantity in order to have a wine able to travel. So yes, it's a natural wine with a little bit of sulfur that it make this wine able to travel for a long time. Then there is also an effect with this sulfur, because all the life is into a biodynamic wine is able to eat the bad part of the sulfur. So, for example, if you have 10 of sulfur today, in 6 months you'll have 4, because the wine is able to eat it. So, starting from this point, is normal that if you have not a very rich grapes, a live grape, not very powerful in sense of life, it's difficult to have in the cellar the possibility to work without products that can keep clean the wine. If you don't put any sulfates in a wine that is having a poor or not a very rich regeneration in the vineyards, you risk to have some bad smell. Or, for example, people is not making not change very often the place of the wine, avoiding the smell coming from the residues, could have this kind of bad smell. At the beginning, let's say 10 years ago, it was a sort of identity for what it was not industrial. from the factory. So if it's, let's say, dirty or maybe not clean, let's say that, you're sure that it's an artisanal wine and is not a wine coming from the industrial factory wine production. Now people is a bit tired to taste this, to accept these not clean wines because they see people is evolved in the while. They see you can have a natural, biodynamic, whatever it is wine without bad smell, simply because they learned better how to do vinification. And so, yes, I think in 2022, the bad smelling wines are less acceptable. Knowing even when you work in biodynamic or natural wine, you can have a very good result.
So when you say bad smell, are you talking about like Brettanomyces or?
Exactly. And then, but the question is, what do you mean for not clean wines? We would have to open a big amphora of, because it depends, Brett is not that terrible if it's in a quantity, very small quantity, balanced with other elements, and keep in the balance, and also can make a richer complexity. For example, of course, when it's too much, is unacceptable. Volatile again is not that bad if it's in a acceptable rate, balance with other elements. All of this can create a lot of complexity and is not exactly a mistake, but always depends from the balance. That's important. Like the alcohol, you can have a very alcoholic wine, but if it's supported by a great structure, is not a problem, is an element making the wine richer. So the answer is always balance.
So speaking about high alcoholic wines, one of the things you're famous for is Amarone.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the way you make Amarone? And when we're done with that, we'll talk about the 13 families. But tell us your philosophy on making Amarone and the alcohol level.
Amarone is a fantastic, amazing wine born here from a different experience. The history here talk about 2 millennium of wine history in my area. And the grandfather of Amarone was called Recioto, and it was a sweet wine produced by drying the grapes for 3 or 4 months. So you concentrate a lot of the sugars, and you reduce the water inside. And so when you fermented it, you have a very intense and rich concentrated must, becoming then a sweet wine. Or in the last 70 years, we are able to have the Amarone because we are able to understand when to stop the drying process to have the right quantity of sugar in order to have a rich, powerful wine, but not sweet, dry. So our philosophy is exactly that. We like to have a dry Amarone with 0 sugar residues in order to make a wine able to stay in every kind of table, and very easy in the match with the food. We consider Amarone not a wine for after dinner, but a good companion for many kind of different food, enjoyable today or in 20-25 years, because having this kind of alcohol structure and intensity, you can age for decades in the right place.
So it's a different kind of Amarone. I personally had the chance to taste most of your wines, and I can vouch for that. One of the things I had the pleasure of is dining in the cellar at Bottega Vini and having some friends there and sharing your Amarone, which is fun. Tell us about the Familia Historica, and your role there in Bottega Vini.
11 or 12 years ago, we decided to found this association, putting together, now we're 13 different families related, of course, of the wine production. So historical families working in the Amarone area, because we wanted to promote, to introduce the Amarone stories and vinification to the world, where sometimes the Amarone is not understood very well. And so we wanted to explain the process, the area. And so we put all together, even if we are 13 located in different part of the Valpolicella area, with different size of business, of hectare, and viticulture, and also soil. So I found this very interesting because we have a big scenarios of Amarone production. And so we can better explain all the experiences. And this group of people in 2011 decided to buy this Bottega del Vino. That is one of the most famous restaurants in my city, in Verona. It's a sort of wine museum. It's very, very old. We're talking about 500 years old. Of course, not in this form, but started in that far time. Being a place where mostly we drink wine. Of course, there is food now. It's a restaurant. It's very famous, but the real fame is for the wine list. Talking about 4,000 and something hundred of labels, more than 20,000 bottles in the cellar. So, for who is interested in that, is an amazing and unforgettable experience.
Yeah, if you're ever in Verona, go to Bottega del Vino or
Del Vino, yes.
Del Vino, sorry.
We were so lucky to have the possibility to be part of this part of history and of our city.
So when you're talking about the 13 families, one of the things I think that's distinctive about the Valpolicella area is the presence and significance of female principals and owners and winemakers. Marilisa Allegrini is one that comes to mind. You as well. You kind of have a reputation in the area. Can you comment on that?
But we are many, many women now around. So even Sabrina Tedeschi, as you said, Marilisa, and Nadia Zenato. Let's say in every family there is a stronger presence of women, because of course we have a nice sensitivity for the agriculture, the presence of nature, for the relations. So yes, in Verona we are many women now. It's not that uncommon.
It is kind of an uncommon thing, I think, in the rest of the world, becoming less so. But this whole thing about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Have you faced issues where you being a woman has been a challenge or a problem or presented something that you had to overcome?
Yes, of course. But especially at the beginning of my experience, not now, not for sure. When I was younger, especially because I was young and was the daughter of my father, so it's more complicated. But no, let's say generally speaking, not that much.
Okay, let's move on to the U.S. market. Most of the listeners of this show are in the U.S. market, and talk about some of the challenges, opportunities, and solutions you've come up with. You started with a national importer. The idea of selling to one entity and let them manage the brand. And you've come 180 degrees. Tell us about why and what benefits that provides to you and the winery.
The different importers. Talking about a winery like mine, it is small and as a family business. What is important for us is the personal approach, the human approach, the human relation, because we have to not to sell wine, generally speaking, but we have to sell an experience, a lifestyle, an identity, and so we need to have a very personal contact. And so I prefer to work in different areas of your country, with person on the market, but sort of a family business, even in the importer. In fact, the majority of my importers are a sort of a family business, and so I can talk directly with the person who better understand our goals, our results, our changement, the news, and so you create a sort of friendship more than a commercial relationship.
Plus, I think in your case, it's not like you have. I think you said 25 hectares under vine, I believe, and total production is only 200,000 bottles. It's not like you have an endless supply of wine to sell. So you're not as challenged, I think, on pricing, and you can get the pricing for the wine that the wine warrants and represents. And I think that gives you a lot more flexibility than somebody who's trying to sell wine at $9.99 through supermarkets. It's just not what you're all about.
No, definitely no. Because once again, I'm selling my experience, my life, my lifestyle, and I try to explain with my wine and my bottles what we have here. So the idea is to reply the experience, to be here, to smell the atmosphere, to see the ladybirds, the butterflies, the grass in the glass. I would like to have this kind of experience. I would like the people could have this kind of experience drinking my wine. It's not a game of prices.
Yeah. That's a special thing. I think there's an element of
even if we are not that expensive, so it's affordable.
Well, okay, just to put things in perspective, the average price of a bottle of wine sold in supermarkets is $10. The average price of a bottle of wine sold at through wine.com, e-commerce, if you will, is like $38. And that's the world that you guys are inhabiting. Is customers are looking for better quality wines, wines that are unique, wines that have an authentic story, and more importantly to many, a person behind it who has a philosophy. And that's really what we're talking about here. So taking that philosophy into specifics, I remember once being in your winery and I have this wonderful picture of you hugging the egg. You were one of the first people to bring an egg. Tell us about that, and then we'll get into the stone tanks.
I love my eggs. Eggs are the first experience I had, sort of self-vinification. Again, what I would like to do is to transfer my soil into the glass. And to do that, we need to touch as less as possible the grapes, the wine, whatever. And the eggs are in a shape that is able to mix, to keep in the movement the wine and during the vinification without touching it. So the wine for a physical events of two different volumes is able, and so two different temperatures, is able to keep moving the wine all the time. And this is good because it's self-filtering the wine and is transforming, is making a vinification by itself. So the only thing we do when we put the wine in the egg is to taste it. I just had a sample from the egg, and the wine is slowly mixing, and so month after month is keeping clean and is making every day cleaner. And so I won't filter it because it's self-filtering.
This is kind of the gentle approach that a lot of things that people have to do to overcome some of the challenges of growing and vinifying the wine, managing more naturally. Okay, so you've got the egg, great. You also had done a couple of tanks custom made out of the Veronese stone, the typical red.
Sì, the Marmo Rosso di Verona. That is my idea, honestly, because again, to make the wine, to put the grapes in the wine the perfect comfort, I thought that it was important to put the wine back in the same material where they were born. And so in my area, my Mussella is located in a place where the soil is 100% calcar and red clay. And the Marmo Rosso di Verona, the Veronese stone, is calcar and red clay pressed together, very compressed. And I see it was an experiment, but then when we try with a lot of happiness, we saw the wine was behaving definitely better. The self-vinification is happening faster than in a wood or in an oak or in cement, for example. And so we are continuing now in. I just received the sphere because I wanted to try with three volumes. And I'm super happy. It makes me very excited.
So talk a little bit more about that. I haven't seen that, but I love the concept. Yeah, how big is it? And how did you get it? How did anybody make a sphere out of Veronese stone?
I know. It's my idea that I'm following this concept because it's working. So first I try with two different volumes in the same tank, let's say. And now with the sphere, I have three volumes. So I wanted to see if it will create confusion or it will have because I also put a spiral inside that in the concept of the golden,
like the rule of thirds, you mean the golden
aurea, sì, spirale aurea.
Oh, so that golden spiral. Yeah, okay.
Exactly that. I would conduct the movement of the wine in that kind of circle. So I'm very curious. I just arrived. I need to fill it up, and then I'll be in Italy. I will tell you the experience. So.
Okay, maybe we can taste it. And speaking of which, so reds versus whites. Whenever we talk, it seems like I'm always focused on the reds, but you guys are pretty famous for the whites too. So you talk about the balance of reds versus whites and the different philosophies of making them.
Definitely, the red is the biggest production. So red for us, Valpolicella, for example, is my favorite wine, even if it's the simplest, because better represent what we are doing here: the pureness, the fruitness. Again, the life is inside without touching it, because we don't put in oak, we just put in cement, and just to make it very pure and transparent and sincere. So we don't work that much in the cellar anymore. We just keep clean We just keep we follow like parents the development of these guys, helping in case, but mostly we are there. And we put them in condition to have the right place to stay, the right temperature. We protect them more than we work with them. So the concept is always the same. Make a wine that is very easy to be approached, is very digestible, is healthy, and make you have fun when you drink it, and not addicted when you get up.
There you go. Okay. So one of the things I meant to mention about that red stone, which you see all over Verona, and the arena of Verona was made with it, and you can see embedded in it is all of these ammonites and prehistoric, fossils and kind of things. It was absolutely fascinating to be just walking around Verona and in the arena and seeing all of this stuff. And I mean, 2,000 years, that's kind of been there. The arena defines Verona as a region, and that's how long you guys have been making wine. That's kind of fabulous. So take that back 2,000 years. You're also working with Amphoride. Tell us about that.
Look, I'm not a super expert because I just started. I prefer to work with marble. I feel it more in my veins. But again, I like to try everything. So I have three amphoras in three different sizes, and they are working very well.
Are you making specific wine? Are you making, for example, orange wine, or are you doing this with like they do the Kaveri in Georgia?
I'm doing some experiments of wine without sulfates. This wine won't be sold out of this winery, just people who come in here, because I don't want to risk who will receive it could have some problem. I don't think is correct. Yeah.
But I applaud the creativity and the openness to do all that stuff. There's I think a burgeoning interest in the U.S. in, call it natural, but reverting back to the things that historically have always worked, and they've worked for a reason. So we've talked about a lot of things. I like to end my conversations with the big takeaway. I think a central subject in talking to you and talking about Mussella wines is biodynamics. It's still regarded as a little bit out there, or a lot out there, or totally unknown to most American wine drinkers, and yet you're fully dedicated to it. Where does biodynamic fit in the American market, in your opinion?
As you can easily imagine, more in the West Coast and in New York. And in that are the two special areas where they are more sensitive to that. It's more difficult to work in the central part of US talking about biodynamic, because at the moment people is not that interested into, but they don't know. So when we are in California or in Nevada or in Washington or Oregon, everybody knows. A lot of people is practicing. And it's easy. Biodynamics is now, thanks God, is now becoming more and more popular, because the people see the difference, can taste the difference, and can enjoy the difference, both buying the products, vegetable, fruit, or wine, and also seeing the result on the soil, because it's evident. It's not something magic or a philosophy. This is a big mistake often. People think about biodynamic like something related to the start, witch, and strange things. But honestly speaking, it's mostly a agriculture method with concrete results. Then you can study during the night your stuff, but that is more a personal path. The most important thing is to talk about what is going on, what is happening to the soil after biodynamic viticulture. And so in the US, I see this. If you talk about in California and that the West Coast are very sensitive. In New York, especially young people, is very interesting. Also New York is developing. Honestly speaking, it's 2 years. I'm not coming in the US. So I don't see the development in this month, in these 2 years. But till 2019, I see in New York they start slowly to be more interested into that. And the rest of US, my opinion, is still a bit.
It's also a function, I think, of the type of stores that you're in. And one of the reasons for that, your importer in U.S. is Hill City Imports, and Howard Bernstein, a mutual friend of both of ours, is getting you in the right places and on display in the right places, in the kinds of stores where the people who can appreciate the wines that you guys shop at. So that's in New York, it's Hill City. What are your other major importers, like in California?
California, and California, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, Texas, and then I have a guy in Florida who's doing a good job. As I said, very small importers, personal relationship, and people is able to explain my project. And then I have a guy in Washington D.C. and Maryland, and another one in Pennsylvania. Small things, but working. And then of course in Chicago.
Okay, so a big shout out, thank you to Maddalena Pasqua di Bisceglie. I really enjoyed working with you over the years, visiting your winery, and more importantly, drinking your wine and sharing it with other people. Thank you so much for sharing your time and explaining your philosophies of how you make wine.
Thank you, Steve. It's a great pleasure to talk with you, and thank you for the question. Thank you for the possibility to talk about Mussella, my place, and looking forward to see you again in Italy, finally.
Yeah, we'll be back. I'll be back. Okay, so this is Steve Raye. Thank you all for listening to Get U.S. Market Ready with the Italian Wine Podcast. Our guest this week was Maddalena Pasqua di Bisceglie. And tune in next Monday. We're going to have another fascinating conversation on the world of Italian wine. This is Steve Raye. Thanks again for listening on behalf of the Italian Wine Podcast.
Guys, I'm Joy Livingston, and I am the producer of the Italian Wine Podcast. Thank you for listening. We are the only wine podcast that has been doing a daily show since the pandemic began. This is a labor of love, and we are committed to bringing you free content every day. Of course, this takes time and effort, not to mention the cost of equipment, production, and editing. We would be grateful for your donations, suggestions, requests, and ideas. For more information on how to get in touch, go to ItalianWinePodcast.com.